South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune with me now, chairman of the Republican Policy Committee. And Senator, welcome to you back here in America's Newsroom. Where are Republicans today as you wake up the day after the speech?
Well, I think most Republicans saw the speech yesterday as blame Republicans for where we are, attack Paul Ryan, and then to the degree that he presented any kind of a plan for the future, it involved raising taxes on our job creators, on our small businesses. So it's kind of the same old rhetoric, heavy on partisanship, very light on substance, and so we'll wait and see when the president actually submits a plan. This was the so-called vision. When he talks about a balanced vision, we all know what that means. That means that there are going to be tax increases on the American people.
We're going to hear from Paul Ryan this morning, so we will get fresh reaction from him when he speaks. In the meantime, you were on with Greta last night. You said there were 56 programs in the federal government right now across 10 federal agencies that all teach financial literacy?
Right.
Is that a fact, and how literate is that?
It was a recent Government Accountability Office report, Bill, and they did an assessment of all the duplication in the federal government. And this is why the point I'd made last night with Greta about we have got to reduce spending. We have got to attack all this wasteful Washington spending, and the Democrats want to focus on, raising taxes on the American people. But the GAO found that there are 56 programs spread across 10 different agencies of the government that teach financial literacy, as if Washington, D.C. has any credibility when it comes to financial literacy. There are 82 programs across a whole range of government agencies and departments that focus on teacher training. I mean, there is so much duplication in this federal government. Hundreds of billions of dollars potentially could be saved there, and that's where we ought to start.
Okay, the other idea you have, and you floated that this week, you think we should do a budget every 2 years. Right now it's done every 1 year. Every year. How would that help in the process if you went to your idea?
Well, a lot of states do this, but here's where I think it matters. We spend so much time around here every single year trying to get appropriation bills passed or trying to pass a budget. In many cases it doesn't happen. The Democrats didn't pass a budget or a single appropriation bill last year, but we don't spend the time on oversight. We have a $3.8 trillion enterprise called the federal government, and we don't spend enough time figuring out not how to spend money but how to save money. And if you did a budget in the odd-numbered years, then in the even-numbered years when people were running for re-election, you would be able to focus not on spending money, but how do we save money? How do we do more oversight? How do we find these programs that are so duplicative and that waste so much of the taxpayers' dollars?
I think on the surface it makes sense. You're trying to take the politics out of the argument. But Washington's all about politics.
Of course it is, and and clearly there's always going to be an element of politics involved with this, but it does help sanitize the politics out of it a little bit if you're not spending money every year. If in an election year, an even-numbered year, you're actually focusing on saving money and focusing on oversight, I think it would be much easier, because what typically happens in an election year is people are trying to figure out how to gain votes by spending money on this particular program or this particular constituency, and this would change that narrative entirely and force us to focus more on how to save money.
In the meantime, the spending continues, and so does the debt. One more point here. If this $38 billion idea passes, you will have a Democratic Senate agree to it and a Democratic president sign it. What does that say about where the mind frame of America is now?
Well, I think it represents a dramatic shift, and I think the reason the president came out with a speech yesterday is he felt like he was being left out of the narrative last week with the Ryan budget. But remember, the Democrats started at zero. They didn't want to do any savings this year. The president's budget this year actually increased spending, and so the fact that they have come to almost $40 billion in spending reductions signals that they have heard the American people, and I think the American people need to continue to stay engaged in this debate because their message is getting through. And I hope there's a lot more to come with this administration when it comes to now taking on not just the billions of dollars we're dealing with from last year's budget, but the trillions of dollars we're dealing with in the future.
In a word, you expect this to pass on both sides?
I think it. Sure, I think it will, and not everybody's going to vote for it, but I think it'll pass.
Okay, we are waiting for that vote throughout the day. John Thune, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill.
All right.